welcome everybody. This is our first meeting of the permanent platform. So thanks to all of y'all who followed along with our work on temporary, but we have shifted over to the permanent folks. So thank you to each of y'all who ran in your congressional districts and cared enough about this document to show up and do advocacy around it. And I'm really excited to get to work with each of y'all. My name is Hannah Horick. I am the president of the Texas Young Democrats. I'm based in Williamson County, just north of Austin. And am really just excited to bring a couple of years of platform experience, but mostly a real learning opportunity for me right alongside y'all as we approach this document with a fresh set of eyes through this permanent committee. I want to give my fellow committee officers a chance to introduce themselves so you kind of know who's leading us through this process. And then I'll give a quick roadmap of the rest of what we're going to talk about during orientation, and then we're going to hit the ground running. So I'll hand off first to our Vice Chair, Leonard Aguilar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. It's great to see everybody here today. My name is Leonard Aguilar. I am the Secretary Treasurer of the Texas AFL-CIO and reside in Hays County here just south of Austin. So it is an honor to be here and just want to acknowledge the work that's gone into this document from everybody behind the scenes and everybody from across the state that's put the effort and the time into this. Really am just appreciative of the work that y'all are doing and that we are doing, and thank you for the opportunity. I believe Laura?
Yes, hello. My name is Laura Odom. I'm the secretary of the committee. I am the policy director for the Texas Young Democrats. I have also sat on the platform committee. I believe this is my third time now on the TDP platform committee. First time as an officer, however. So I'm very excited to work with you guys.
Oh, thank you both. I'm really looking forward to having a couple of folks carry over. If you're not familiar, all three of us served on the temporary committee as officers as well. And we have a few folks carrying over from the temporary committee. But I'm also really excited to see so many fresh faces. I've had the pleasure of sitting on a permanent platform once in 2018, and I'm really looking forward to getting to do that work again because the vast majority of my work has been on temporary in years past. So I think this is a really fun place because it's such a change from year to year as to what kind of knowledge and skill sets that we have coming into this. And so we get some really, really neat advocacy areas that folks are looking out for that we may not have considered when we were getting together on temporary. So just to give you kind of a roadmap of what we're going to talk through this evening, I wanted to really touch on a broader platform philosophy that the officers have talked through that really guided us through temporary and has been the standard for platforms past, and something that we're really trying to stick to through this process over the next several weeks. The second thing I'll go through briefly is how to make those edits. I won't go into too much technical detail, but we will talk through a little bit of like what that Google form looks like and how the editing process is going to work and what that looks like, not so much in this meeting, but in meetings going from here on out. And then finally, the last thing I'll just drop in is some date reminders as we are looking ahead to the upcoming meetings, and then what that means for us in terms of submitting the platform for final approval by the full body at convention. So with that, let's jump in and get started. The first thing, like mentioned, is platform philosophy. So there's a lot of ways to write a platform, but the approach that we're really going to focus on with this committee is on writing a document that touches on a broad spectrum of issues without trying to legislate through this document. The platform is a platform. It is its own entity. It is not a piece of legislation. It is not a bill, and it is not a resolution. So I want to challenge each of us to just be cognizant as you're working through your edits, as you're bringing things to us from your congressional districts, because I know many of y'all have wonderful folks in your CDs, whether delegates or otherwise, who have issue areas that they care about, that they are asking you to bring to this committee, and looking at those and saying, how do we bring this into the document in a way that makes sense, that's going to last for 2 years? So this has to keep us through until the next convention. And that we want to make sure that it stays relevant through that process. So a couple of like really easy flags to look for is we're not going to do specific naming of legislation wherever possible. So if I were to say we oppose SB4 in the platform, it's not necessarily really clear to a lay reader which SB4. And even if we clarify, well, it's SB4 from the Texas regular special session of the 85th legislative session, that starts to get really, really specific when instead we could talk about how SB4 of the 85th, for example, was, if I remember correctly, that was the bathroom bill versus the SB4 that we're fighting now. Very different SB4 having to do with immigration issues. So let's talk about that issue rather than calling it by a bill name. Another big change that we made in previous years that was really constructive that I'd love to see through here is not doing specific naming of Republicans, in particular of the former president. So his name doesn't need to be in our platform. This document's not about him. It is about the values that we share as Democrats. What does this party believe? So as you're going through and writing, if you're trying to advocate against a particular policy, let's talk about what that tactic is that we're opposing, or what a policy is that we're opposing, or even better, what in a positive framing does the Democratic Party believe instead? So we're focusing on what are the things that we as a party do stand for, and how are we going to be good advocates for the people of Texas? And just more broadly, I mentioned it a little bit, but this isn't a place to legislate. So you may have something that deserves truly 100-page dissertation on, like, with enormous depth on all of the different nuances of, for example, my background is in domestic and sexual violence prevention and resources for survivors. I can assure you those 2-ish paragraphs in the platform are just a very small portion of what I believe policy should look like for supporting survivors of intimate partner violence. But we need to take that policy and look at how does this relate in part of the bigger picture, and how do we convey that relative to other big pieces like public education, like supporting labor, like advocating for free speech and democracy. What does that look like for us in the document in its whole capacity? So just being mindful that while we might have a really great technical detail that we want to talk about, that might be for our partners over on the resolutions committee, or to advocate for our legislative partners later on down the line. So there's a lot of me talking at y'all. Does anybody have any questions about that I can help answer, or other officers can help answer, in terms of kind of that guiding philosophy that we're setting up? Awesome. All right. And some of this is you don't know it until you see it. And some of it is you start writing it and you get in it. We have to take a look. If you watched last night's, there were moments that even I got bogged down in, like, writing some very detail specific parts of a particular policy piece. And then it took somebody with a little bit fresher face, a little bit fresher view of an issue to go, hey, now, why do we need to, like, clearly spell out this, and why do we need to figure this out when we're just talking about this in broad generalities? So it's okay if you start to get into the weeds on the thing that you care about. Call folks in nicely, ask a question instead of making a statement. Just give somebody the opportunity to make a redirection on the piece that they're working on. The next thing that I'll go into is kind of how those edits are going to go. So we're using one very large Google document. So you'll start all the way at the top with, the platform. We have some quotes that were inserted. We'll see the title, the index, and then we jump right in to a statement of principles, and then all the way down through those platform planks. So it's a really, really, I don't know what it looks like when you left your editing, Marco, but last I looked, it was about 70 pages long. And it's okay if you do not look at every single issue area. So one of the things that I encourage folks to do is find the areas that you care about, read through all of those, and then we're going to lean really heavily on Google Docs comment feature. So if you're not familiar with that, we're going to send around a link, if we haven't already, that talks about how to do those comments, how to submit those. And basically what we're going to ask for y'all to do is make your suggestion And I'd actually encourage, I said comment feature, but where at all possible, I think we're actually going to use the suggestion feature. Thank you. I see Marco's thumbs up. I can assure you after what we did these last 2 weeks, it is so much easier if you write your text the way you want it. So with the suggestion tool, you can highlight a piece of text and put in exactly what you want changed. You can make an insertion if you want a new bullet point. You can highlight a piece of text and hit the backspace key or the delete key, and it will strike through all of that without making a final change. Only those of us with editing access will be able to make any changes, which we won't do except as part of the actual committee work that we've all voted on. And when you type in your specific suggestion, we get your language correct, first of all. But the second part of that is it will streamline the meeting as we go forward when we get together next week. If you've watched previous meetings, you know that a good chunk of some of our meetings was taken up by me going, hey, can you dictate out what you're trying to say so I can type it in? And I think your time is much better spent as a group with you typing in the specific things that you want to say so that we can go in and just yes or no on changes after we've discussed, and we're not having to retype in that information. You will be amazed at how much faster it'll go. If you have thoughts that are not a language suggestion, that comment feature is great. It works just like a comment on any like media platform that you're used to using, where you just drop in thoughts on the side of the document. They're connected to your name. They'll highlight responding to the text that you're talking about. And it lets everybody be able to make replies. You can tag people so that they get an email notification, letting them know that there's a new comment in y'all's thread. It was a really effective way for folks to collaborate as you're working on places where you have shared policy interests. So please, I will be really firm when we reconvene on having already put in suggested language. And I will skip sections and wait until folks have put in their suggested language and in favor of where it has already been used, because that slowed us down so much on temporary. So please, if you've got it, go ahead and put it in. If you just have a draft and you know it's not perfect, that's okay. Put that in and we can make an edit. If you have most of an idea, but you think it sounds awkward, I'd rather edit something awkward than have to, as a body of, if all of us are here, it's 38 of y'all plus, well, us ignoring vacancies. There's up to 38 of us plus our officers plus staff. So can be a lot of human beings all in one call waiting for folks to type. If you get stuck on the Google Doc feature, please reach out to myself or one of the other officers or staff. We're happy to help. I don't want technology to hold anyone back in terms of how you're engaging with the platform. I think this is a really great tool, but if it stands in anybody's way, then we want to help you just guide through it so that you can get comfortable using it. Any questions? Awesome. It's going to be second nature by the time we're all done with it. You're going to be so tired of seeing Google Docs. You're never going to want to see one of those little bubbles ever again. And it's going to be really something, but it's a really helpful tool. I found it really productive for us meeting. And then the last part really for me is just date reminders. So the plan as of right now is to meet on Tuesday, May 21st in the evening. And I think if, like I said, if you've been watching along, some of y'all heard how long we went yesterday. Yesterday was an 8-hour meeting, and that was our second of 2 meetings. So in our first meeting, we met and we just went through and everything that was a solid up or down vote, it was like, oh, yes, we do. This is an easy policy agreement. Everyone agrees on. There's no discussion. We'll do that first so that we're not going to talk about stuff that we all agree on. It is not a good use of our time. We'll do one first pass. And if you've got discussion on a topic, we'll save it for the next one and we'll move on. When we make that second pass, though, that's what has the real capacity to slow us down. And that is where we were yesterday. It was a really long call. And I want to, as much as possible, avoid a call like that unless we have really good work that we're actively doing and we need more time. It's a valid reality that sometimes we just need more time to meet. So at present, the plan is to do as much of that work as possible on the 21st. Marco, am I right in remembering that we at present only have that one meeting set?
Let me see if we have another tentative one. I'm sorry, let me check.
That's okay. I'm gonna try to fix this while there we go. That way I'm not blinded. Slightly better. So I have one date being the 21st, and the one advantage that y'all have while Marco's looking over the temporary committee is that y'all are getting almost an entire week of lead time going into our first meeting that our first committee just didn't have. We had a smaller window of time between when they got access to the document and when we first met. So please use that time as much as you can. I know we're all busy with our own work and our own CDs, and we're getting ready to go to El Paso. I'm very excited to see you all there and meet you all in person. But use as much of that time as you can, because you would be amazed how many conversations we can settle in those comments while we're waiting.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I do a little bit of a screen share?
Not at all.
Okay. All right, 1 second. Okay, so this is the convention website. I'm going to show you in a little bit how this committee member button can be useful. But if you go to the pre-schedule is basically everything that's happening while we're not in El Paso. So El Paso, the convention is the 6th through the 8th, but everything that this committee is going to do is going to be before June 6th. So, now through June 5th. So that's why there's the pre-schedule button. So if I click that, it'll go to this window. And obviously all the April stuff is here. So let me go and scroll down to May. So today is the 15th. We have listed the orientation is the 15th. So essentially in 6 days is when we're going to come back for our first meeting. And that's scheduled. I don't know why I have that scheduled for only 2 hours. I think it should be at least 3 hours. And maybe if people can stay longer, we'll go a little bit longer. And then we'll close at that. Hopefully we'll get everything finished. But if we need to, we still have this slot on the 28th.
Oh, thank you. That was the date that I was forgetting whether or not we'd settled on that for sure.
Yeah. And
Perfect.
then
Paul, sorry, Marco, finish. Feel free.
And the other thing I wanted to show you that's going to be helpful is this convention committee member plus election results button. So if you click on that, it'll get you to this. The short link for that is txdem.co/committee members. The short link for this one is txdem.co/pre-schedule because it's the pre-schedule. But here, what's helpful, obviously, we're past temporary, so you want to sort of ignore what's on the right side. But the left side is where we're going to have our permanent committee members as well as our temporary convention officers that'll be representing the districts because we have some vacancies in certain spots. So those people will be able to participate in debate, maybe even recommend some language, but then someone else technically will need to take it up or the body will need to accept it because those people won't be able to vote or make motions.
Any questions on that? I see, Paul, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
You're on mute.
You moved where I was on my screen. I was about ready to hit unmute, and all of a sudden it jumped to the other side of the screen.
Sorry about
I'm sharing. By the way, Marco, let me say I'm impressed with the way that you walk right through that Texas Democratic Convention screen and just sort of slowly disappear into it when you walk. So, when we did the temporary committee, we at our orientation, we sort of went through and we picked out program areas that we wanted to work on, but I never really saw a list of who was on which program areas, and so I was involved in actually just one subcommittee meeting, if you will, on just one part of the platform. And so my question is, it's entirely possible you sent something out and I missed it, but for this one going forward, can we get a list of, once we indicate, which sections of the platform we want to work on, can we get the who's on that section with us so that we can try to put together meetings between now and the 21st to try to make it so that we can work a bunch of stuff out in advance and cut down the amount of work that needs to be hashed out at the meeting?
Yeah,
We hadn't discussed adding that that breakdown. Like in my mind, I don't want to speak for Marco, but it quite honestly had not occurred to me because permanent platform has always been in person. So there haven't been the opportunities to hash out in advance. We've done it for temporary for years, but it hadn't occurred to me to do it for this group. Marco, if it's not too much of a like clerical burden on y'all's end, I think that would be a great tool to use
Yeah,
for
I mean,
folks.
even in permanent in the past, what we've done is we've had people go off to the side or go off to another room and work stuff out. And so,
Mhm.
since we don't physically have the ability to do that, little side either Zoom rooms or Zoom calls would be really, really useful. I mean, Gene and I did 2 or 3 different extensive calls where we talked through stuff, and that was extremely helpful.
So
But other than that, I didn't know who else to reach out to for the other platform areas. So
yeah, so I have a couple of ideas. So this last temporary committee, what we did do when you were when we were signing up, we did have a form. So we did break down the interest form sections if you had attended the orientation. And so we grouped people there, and so we showed that sheet. But of course, not everybody filled that out. So there's a couple of things that we could potentially do differently, depending on how you want to run it, Madam Chair, or not. We could actually have I'm happy to like open a Zoom and push people into breakout rooms on a set date, on a weekend or during the day, before the committee. And so if like, let's say on, oh gosh, it's a holiday weekend this weekend, right?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, this upcoming Sunday. So like, I could open a Zoom and say, hey, I'll be here from, 1 to 6. And anyone that wants to come in, like, I can push you to a breakout room if you guys want to go there. So I can prepare that before. So that's an option. I know that's what we did for resolutions. That was, somewhat helpful to sort of get through a lot of the work for temporary resolutions. The other thing is I can do something similar to what we did this last time, but maybe post orientation meeting is have a form of everyone, and they say what sections they're interested in, and then assign someone, or someone takes it upon themselves to organize themselves to talk about a particular section, which I think is what happened this last time. I'm
Mhm.
happy either way. I know that though, it's about 6 days till our first permanent meeting, right?
Let's do
Marco, I have a question. The Google Docs,
Yep, Madam Chair, I'm not even sure who's speaking. If you want to,
I'm not I just can't see who's speaking. If you're speaking, do you mind raising your hand so I can call? We've got a queue of folks waiting. But I would say, Marco, my preference would be to let's do the Google form. And that way folks, I know we had at least 2 subcommittees meet. In addition, I know Paul and Jean meant to work on that first section, so call it 3. And I think that made sense. That way folks can worry about the schedules that just work best for them, and you don't have to worry about trying to pick times when we're already a little bit tight in terms of when we're setting stuff up. So that would be what I would advocate for. And if it's possible that it just spits folks out into a sheet, and that way you don't have to resend it to anybody, we just have the link as people fill out the form. It just drops them in with what categories they're interested in, and folks can kind of go and do that work themselves if they're looking for a subject. I don't know if that's an easy logistical option. That way as people fill it out, that list is kind of still active.
sure.
Okay.
It looks like the person that was speaking was the person who had their hand raised, but they froze around.
Oh no.
I think that's what must have happened. Oh, I think she's back.
I am. I'm in Amsterdam and I have a really volatile connection, so it keeps kicking me out. So sorry about
No,
that.
go ahead. No, you're just fine.
Yeah, I was this Google Docs that you're talking about. How soon will we have access to it? Like, we want to start making edits or suggestions, especially leading up to this meeting on Tuesday.
So Madam Chair.
Go ahead, please. The
Um,
doc is your baby after all the work you did on it yesterday and today.
Yeah, so I was trying to get in a good place based on what happened on yesterday's meeting to have like a clean snapshot of this is what happened at this meeting and we're handing it off. So that way I can save for time eternal as a temporary document. And then create a new document that we'll be working off of as our working document for permanent. I want to give a chance for this recording to make sure that it's posted on YouTube. Also, I know that there was some material that the chair and the officers and staff had drafted that I think we can kind of repurpose a little bit for this committee. I'm thinking if not tonight, maybe by noon tomorrow, I'll have that in a package because obviously it's about half of us that are here, right? Based on I think, well, me also not knowing who some of the committee members were until maybe yesterday or the day before, because we had to do some. There was also some technicalities of the elections, right? There were some people that won in multiple committees, but then they had to decide which committee they were going to serve on, and then based on that would make openings or vacancies, or the second place or third place person will win. So it took a while to sort of work through that. So I do apologize, but yeah, I'm thinking that I can probably knock out something tonight. If I'm not able to, then by tomorrow, and that'll also give a little bit of a. I know Paul was referencing it the very first orientation that we had because it was like, oh, well, whoever gets there first in the document is the first one to start doing the edits, sort of thing. I want to sort of give a a baseline, or would recommend that we give a baseline for the people that weren't able to join us or haven't seen the recording quite yet before sort of give that access. So yeah, if you could give me at least till noon tomorrow, I'll try to knock out something tonight with the language that the chair had approved for temporary. I probably just need to touch that up a little bit.
Perfect. Paul?
Yeah, three things. First of all, hi Jenny, long time no see.
I'm
Second thing, have a wonderful time in Amsterdam. I hope you're there for good reasons. And then the one thing I was going to make in response to what you were saying, Jenny, is I would urge everyone to, before you start trying to make edits, to first read through the whole document. And the reason I suggest that is because otherwise, we're going to get things put in that are already elsewhere within the document. So read through and just try to get in your mind, oh yes, I've seen something about that, so I don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. So please, before you start making comments and edits, it's a bunch of reading. It's a mine eyes glaze over type of a thing, but give yourself enough breaks in there that you can make it all the way through, so that you have some idea that, oh yeah, I think I remember seeing something about that before you try putting it in again.
I agree with that advice 100%. And I had two logistical points that I had left off in my talking about edits that I want to touch on. The first is if you have a new section, so if you make that full read and you realize there's something that's just not included, there's an entire blank or an entire section that you believe should be added that is not, if you will, please add those at the end. If you have a preference about where it goes, if you will add it in, you can make a note in that section that you'd like for it to be elsewhere, but especially if you're talking about adding, like I said, like an entire page worth of text or something along those lines, if you'll just add those at the end, that way we are able to take a look at all of those kind of in order as they currently stand, because there are some things that were reordered as part of temporary, and I'm sure there will be conversations around the order of things as we go through this permanent conversation. And then the second is if you do have comments on reordering, and if you want a particular subject area to be listed before or after another, if you will put that suggestion in as a comment or put it in at the end of the document, and refrain from, where at all possible, moving large chunks of texts. As you can imagine, if you were to take existing text, again, I'll pick on sexual assault language because that is something that I helped write. And if I were to move that into an entirely different section and then someone else were to edit based on the news section, which is now in a suggestion. Then it's kind of layers on layers of comments, or you can layer up at the beginning. That's a really easy way to get duplications. We're going to have so many eyes on this. I think, little things slip by. But if you have those big kind of structural changes, we're going to see more success if you don't try to make that as part of your Google suggestion. If that makes sense. Laura.
Yeah, so if we have an amendment that has to go to a roll call vote, we did create a spreadsheet that makes it a lot easier to do the roll call vote, so we don't have to call each individual name. Been there, done that many times. It takes a very long time. So we have it set up where you can go in and you can edit just your line on so that you can only vote for, yourself. You're not voting for other people. On the topic of that spreadsheet, it is a Google Doc. So please send us your preferred email account that you would like to vote with. Part of the problem we ran into yesterday was that the email addresses that we were given that are on the public form weren't the email addresses that people were trying to vote with. So they didn't have edit access on their line. So if you'll just let us know, preferably as soon as possible, which email address you would like to vote with, that would help us move this process along a lot faster. Thank you.
Laura, would it be easier if folks let you know if they have a different email address than what is listed? That way you don't get 40 notes. So if your email is different than what is on the TDP site, what you use for convention, all of that, then let Laura know. Perfect. I see a thumbs up and a nod. Marco.
All right. So I think had some good ideas based on what Paul has just said, as well as Laura. So let me do some screen sharing if you would let me.
Please go ahead.
All right, I think this is the right window. Okay. So I posted 2 links in the chat. I've made a short link for the temp committee. So in fact, or the temp committee doc. This one, you guys will not get access to edit. So if you want to do the great thing that Paul just said, read through the entirety of the document. That way, you know that things are in this place and things are in this place, and you're not trying to recreate the wheel. And let me even, and I'll post this publicly sometime very soon. So txdem.co/temp, 24-temp-platform. All right. Ooh, I don't like the way that looks, but I'll make it prettier. But essentially, that will go to this document, that link, and you can read it in its entirety and won't be afraid of like, oh, I accidentally edited this, edited that. So it's the original that's coming from the temp committee. Obviously, I've done some reformatting and some applying of things, but this is essentially by and large a quote unquote clean document. I think the only thing at the very end is we were literally on the very last section of the document. So this is on page 61. I think that's the last page. There's some language at the end that is recommended by a member and is forwarded to the committee, not as a recommendation, but for discussion. And it's just because it was the end of the night. We were up here on the second to last section, and it was just like, we were done. So essentially, that's the only sort of odd or kind of different thing about everything. Everything else is coming down as a recommendation from the full temp committee. I'll go ahead and pause, but I do want to continue on something else, which is what Laura talked about, which is the roll call vote stuff. But I'll go ahead and pause if that's okay, Madam Chair.
Of course. Does anybody have any questions about the temporary document as Marco has explained it? Okay. Marco, do you want to jump on to well, Paul, what's the
hand up about it?
Yes, go ahead.
Marco, My understanding also is in the section just before the one that you highlighted, there is language in that second to the last section that is again not stuff that was adopted by the temporary committee but was posted for our consideration. Because we did not ever take any final votes on some of the language there, and in fact, we have a couple of things that are, if you will, conflicting provisions that we couldn't adopt them both and have it work. But.
I'm happy to edit it if there's me misunderstanding something, but if we could take that offline, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can, we can figure that out.
Okay. The other thing, it's not specifically to that topic, but the previous thing, if people are going to be sending in alternative email addresses, could they also let you know if those are the email addresses they want to be contacted at? Because if for example, we're putting together a group and we want to, or if there's somebody who's made a comment and we want to reach out to them and have a discussion with them, having whatever is the best email address to contact them at would be very useful. So
I think that's great. That's a good point. All right. Any other questions, comments before we jump on to the voting sheet? Marco?
So this sheet, the committee member sheet, is where the emails that y'all signed up with or that you filed with are. So if someone's email is wrong on here, I can update it here. So this should be the main email that you want to get contacted at. Because that's the one y'all filed with, essentially. So this sheet, I think I posted a link in the chat. I'll go ahead and paste it again. I'd like everyone to click on it right now. Because I know that Laura had suggested last night that we also use this as a little opportunity to at least get the members who are here for the orientation to see if they have edit access to their correct row. So I think Laura was going through and essentially making sure that you don't have the ability to edit any of the rows except your own. So that way you're able to vote or not. But you can't vote for anyone else. When we tried to do this last night, it worked for most people, but it did not work for all. So, yeah, when you click on that link, is anyone getting something that says you do not have access?
I did, and I see Leonard's hand.
Okay. Leonard, did you not have access?
Yeah, I don't have access either.
Okay.
Maddie Gibson in the chat says that she needs access.
All right, so what I'd like you guys to do is if you don't have access, click on the button that says request access. Yeah, so right now we're doing a little bit of a working meeting.
Where is that button, please?
Okay, so the button will be, all right, go in the chat, click on the link to the sheet that I just posted. Did I post it in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, so
Now I see it. I see it.
if you're on that, if you click on that sheet link and it says you do not have access, then request. Also, something that's important is check to make sure you're logged in with the correct email. For instance, Hannah, if you don't have access, make sure that you're trying to open it with hannahkhorick@gmail.com, not another email that you're logged in with is the example there. So you may want to switch emails because you may already have access. So that might be the case for Leonard. That might be the case for, I think, Maddie. But
Yeah, if you're using Google Chrome, one way to look for that is in the top right-hand corner. It probably has the icon of whichever account you're logged in on, if you are a multi-account user.
Yeah, and if you get the screen that you don't have access, there'll be like a request button and like a window box, but then right under it'll say you are using Marco@txdemocrats.org. but you actually need to click that and then switch to the email that's listed here for you, because that's the one you have the access on. So, all right, hopefully by this point, everyone's requested the access. I'm going to go to my inbox and see.
I'm still having problems logging in, so just give me a minute.
Okay.
And then Madeline's got her hand up as well. Maddie?
I'm just trying to figure out how to switch from my Gmail Chrome account to my Yahoo. Um,
A good
Just-
way might be to open it in a private browser. If you're
Yeah.
getting stuck being logged, like forcibly logged into another account, Google has this very convenient, very inconvenient, depending on what you're using it for,
okay.
profile feature, and that often gets me.
right.
All right.
Tim?
So, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just if you've got something that's not like a Gmail account, you're going to have to use a Gmail account to log in. So just request it with that. So if you're on Yahoo or like me, I have my own domain, not going to work for you. So you'll have to request.
Yeah, or you can there's a way to make your account that's not a Google account or not a Gmail based system that you can make it a Google account. And you can do that with anything, with a Yahoo, with a personal domain, etc.
My non-Gmail account is working fine. I was able to click. I've got a vote in there.
Yeah, and that's because you've made at some point what you've done. What I just said or recommended is you've essentially made your email a Google account. It's not a Gmail, but it's essentially registered with Google as a Google account. So that's why you're able to use all the Google Docs and do the things. How about we go in participant order to see who does or doesn't have access? Because I'm not getting any requests. Oh, you know what? Laura, you made this sheet. You're probably getting the requests. Can you go to your Gmail?
Definitely helps if that, yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was like, I don't see any requests. I see requests for other stuff.
So okay. For the people, since do I just give them view only immediately and then go in and make them editor of their specific line?
No. So what I would say is make them editor, and then you have to go in on their line.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you want to make them an editor first, and then on their line, edit the one that's already exists for locking down the permission and give that person permission.
Cool.
Sorry, I thought I was going to be able to do it. So let's go down the line. Hannah, do you have access by switching over? Were you able to vote?
No, I was logged into my personal, I'm logged into the right one and I still didn't have access.
Okay.
To be fair, I definitely built this like while we were in the meeting yesterday, so I may have just
No worries.
Hey, now I have access. Thank you.
Okay, Laura. Oops, why am I trying to give Laura access? She created the thing. Leonard.
Yeah, I still didn't have it.
All right.
I just approved Leonard.
Okay.
Lizette, Leonard, Tim, Hannah, Madeline. Those are the only ones that I received.
Okay. And then not Hannah and Leonard, but everyone else, I think you're going to have to go individually on their row and approve or change the permissions to let them be able to check on it.
Gotcha.
Let me know if you need me. Or actually, I could probably do that. All right. Leonard, are you able to check your box? Might need a refresh.
Grateful that you all are patient with me. I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Laura, for doing the grunt work on that. That's never fun.
I like it as it is right now. I'm 1/4 of the votes needed to pass something.
The box now, I have access, but it's not allowing.
Okay, so
I'm in the same boat. I can't click on my my checkbox.
all right, 1 second.
Same here.
Paul's
Okay.
learning from the Republican legislators on how to get his votes through.
Tim, can you refresh and try, please?
Still not letting me.
Weird. Okay. I have you as an editor on the one row.
Oh, the email that you were working on with me there that you had is not the email that, it's a different email. You got my personal email.
Okay, so I just permissioned you on both, so go ahead and refresh, Leonard.
Okay.
Log into either your Texas AFL-CIO one or your Leonard 70 whatever.
Good to go.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
Leonard's good. Zabrina, are you able to click on your box?
Can you post the link again? I'm on my phone and I got kicked out, so I'm not able to log in yet. So I don't know.
Okay.
I can repost it, Marco.
Thank you. And while we're there, I'll check. So you are row 8. Keep on forgetting what thing this is in. Okay, so it's in data, right? No? Yes. Protect range and sheets. So you're row 8, Zabrina. So let me look for 8. Why are these not sorted? Oh, there it is.
Oh, it drives me crazy. It's not sorted.
Yeah. Okay. Zabrina, it looks like your our new blue wave is at Gmail is permission to check the box. So you should be good.
Correct.
Okay, cool. All right. Do we have Mohammed Neal here? I don't think so.
I may have figured out the problem
What, for Tim?
for the people that don't have access. It looks like on some of these, I forgot to remove, didn't you tell me that if multiple people are, like if I forget to remove the editors that shouldn't have access, it would mess it up? That I'm wondering if
Yeah.
that's what happened. Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Okay, no, that's fine. Who else cannot check their own box? That's still here. Madeline, did you get fixed?
Yes, it's work. It's I'm able to get access and I'm trying to check the box. But it's not working.
And you're Maddie Gibson, right?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna look at you right now. Tim?
Yeah, it's still not working for me.
Okay.
Row 20, if that helps.
Cool. All right, Maddie, what's your email? Is it madmerrick@yahoo?
Well, that's the 44 is my Gmail. That's
Okay. Found
yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I just permissioned you. Go ahead and refresh and then see if you can check the box.
All righty. Yep, it works.
Perfect.
I think it just doesn't like me.
Gremlins.
All right, Tim, you're 20. Yeah, you're row 20.
Yep.
All right, so what email should pop up? Mojo Smarty 08?
Yeah, we're going back to high school on that one. Yeah, that's the one that should work. Yeah.
All right, so are you logged in with that account? Basically, in the top right, are you logged into the?
Yeah. Yeah, because I can see the sheet. I just can't edit it.
Well, you should be able to edit it. Are you
Yeah,
sure
I see
you're
that.
into the Mojo?
Yep, that's the one I'm logged into. You can follow me around on the cursor all the way up and down the row.
I'm glad it's not me. No, respectfully. I thought I did something wrong.
It's just you fighting
yeah,
with
I'll
the
double click it
internet.
and
It's
it's-
totally okay.
And if we've got to work on it between now and next time, it's fine. We shouldn't have any votes tonight, right?
No. I think it was just
Yeah.
trying to set it up, trying to avoid this for next time. The nice thing though is like,
Oh, no, I guess. Yeah.
let's say we're at an issue where Tim says, "Hey, it won't let me click." That'll be, Tim, which way do you want to vote? Yes or no? No. Bam. So that'll
Yeah.
solve that right there. But yeah, obviously it'd be nice if you'd be able to click on your own row. Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I wonder what that.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead and work on Tim, but it looks like everyone else is good, right?
Sounds like it.
Yes.
All right. Any other? I had one more thing that I was going to bring up, and I've completely forgotten it in the time that's passed. So it must not have been important. Any questions? Anything else? Janice Schwartz.
Hi, thanks. I had a question. Are we basically, so I was on platform 2 years ago, and are we using the platform from 2 years ago? And was that the base document and modifications made to that? Or did people start writing from scratch?
We started off of the document that y'all finished at the end of 2022. That's what Temporary edited. And then we will be beginning off of the document that Temporary has completed their edits of.
And will we be able to see when we look at the document what Temporary added? Or is it all
That's a good
different?
question. No.
No.
You
Now-
can, the one that's on the website is still the 2022 platform. So if you wanted to compare section to section, you could do that, but there is not any like color coded or anything like that to indicate what is new language and what's old language. There are a few of us that carried over from the committee. So if you want to put, like if you have a section you want to ask about that doesn't ring familiar from the work that y'all did last year, or want to ask context on a change, myself, Paul, Tim, Leonard, Laura, who am I missing? I think there's one or two other folks, especially who are coming in as those kind of placeholders for the vacancies, who might be able to offer some background, and of course, Marco.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because now not only will I provide the static temporary committee recommendation that I showed you the link to, but I'll also just have the link for the 22 platform. Committees, the temporary platform committee kind of has a broad power to sort of, they can start completely from scratch if they wanted to. Because in the end, the motion technically that'll happen on the convention floor is the permanent platform recommends that we strike the existing platform with this platform. Because there's always a forever living from the, hundreds of conventions past, a platform document that essentially we're striking and then replacing with a new document. So, now, could you do it a little bit differently? But it would be a lot messier motion where you're editing one by one on the convention floor each piece, which, yeah.
Don't put that energy into the world.
That's not gonna, we're not gonna do that.
No,
So,
we're not doing that.
Yeah, so that's why you can essentially start from scratch, or, what we did is, got the 22 and started editing down from there.
And I would note there's a couple of new sections. They focus mostly on things like agriculture and and trade. I think those are really our two biggest sections. There's maybe one or two more. But there are changes throughout the document.
The one big change we did is that we replaced the entire preamble and principles sections from the old one with sort of the predecessor to that, which is a statement of democratic beliefs and values. So that whole first thing that you'll see in the new document is, instead of the principles and the preamble and principles section from the 2022 document.
Yeah. Also, I think a big thing is there's like a public safety one that essentially we moved a bunch of planks as sub planks to, and also grabbed so like criminal justice and a couple of others, and also there was, I think, hate crimes existed, I think, in maybe a civil rights or an LGBTQ section that we lifted from there and put in the public safety, just to be a little bit more all encompassing. Yeah, so a little bit of formatting stuff, and we're happy to work through formatting stuff, but the major thing and what I'd recommend is, let's say, hey, I want to put this one in this order, and you know, this plank should be separated into two, or these three planks should be under this. Don't actually do that. Put that in a comment, maybe at the table of contents, that's or you know, somewhere near the top. Because if you do, then it's going to essentially strike through entire sections and then add, or it'll basically be a whole sections of strike through, pages and pages of, and then that new section, and it'll look new, but it's actually not new. So that's why you don't want to move things around, because it'll get super messy super quick. We'll do that in the meeting when we're following suggestions, or formatting, all of that stuff, ordering, that's all clerical. So, I mean, literally, you can just tell me to do it, and we can do it. We don't have to vote on it, and I'll take care of it after a meeting. We can do that as well too, which is actually what I did for a couple of things that the temporary committee recommended.
And the one final thing that I can think of that I want to address is some of you may have in your CDs passed out platform planks in the format of a resolution. And that is something that I want to just kind of touch on if folks aren't familiar with the way that that is structured, because we did have a little bit of confusion at the beginning when we met for the first time in temporary. So the way that platform is structured, we don't review those in any sort of, we aren't obligated to look at all of those. We do have all of those available. And Marco, are you able to share the access to the list if folks want to see the ones that passed out of CDs?
Yeah, I'll include that in the email. I think I did to the temporary committee. I can find that.
Thank you. So if you know that someone from your CD or you put in work on language already and you want to use that language and copy it and put it into the platform, please feel empowered to do so. I know, for example, I worked with someone in a neighboring CD on some specific criminal justice language that we want to put in and we want to make change. But that didn't get put in as part of temporary. It wasn't something that just fit in time-wise into all of our discussions. So those are available, and please, if you want to read through and look for ideas and go in and learn a little bit more about different areas, or look to connect with authors on the writing that they've already done on an issue, please feel free to do so. We're not going to go through those on the meeting. You're welcome to use them as a reference. If you have one that you really want to review, feel free to send it to other folks and say, hey, this is kind of the background on the plank that I'm working to insert, but know that they're there to be a support tool for us as we go through this. So I've looked through, I would say at this point, most of them. I need to go and catch the few that I've missed and go back and revisit some. And there's some really, really great stuff in there that just we didn't have time to put in temporary. There were some suggestions made during even yesterday's temporary meeting that we didn't get a chance to finish. So there's definitely things that we will have an opportunity to review there. But know that if you submitted something to through that process, it did not necessarily get brought up during temporary because it came through as a resolution. So you'll want to go and look for that and see if it's something we've already spoken about, or if it's something that you need to put in as a suggestion using that tool on Google. Questions about that? Okay. Any other logistical questions, technical questions, Marco?
Yeah, if someone is not comfortable with using the editing and comment feature on Google, I'm happy to, after the meeting, stay and like dedicate a little bit of time with you, so that way I can walk you through it and you can learn.
Thank you. That's great.
I-
Jenny Stogner McDavid?
Yes, I had a question. So I know you pass out, can you hear me? Am I on mute?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You pass out information about roll call voting if we're voting specifically on certain things. So I was looking through the rules, and it looks like we're following Robert's Rules of Orders. Page 75 of the rules talks about special rules of order and debate limits. Does that only apply to floor debates, or does that apply to all commission committees where you've got, 3 people speaking before, 3 people speaking against, 2 people speaking on amendments? Are we going to adhere to those rules or what?
So that is to some extent up to us. So you'll notice if you watched temporary, or just if you jump in next Tuesday with us, I am a huge fan of a vote by acclamation. So we took hundreds of votes yesterday, but they didn't sound like votes. And we only did a single roll call, which was nice because it meant we got to learn the spreadsheet. I felt a little silly after we used it, but it was nice to actually make that spreadsheet get put to work. So if you're not familiar, a vote by acclamation is basically the idea of, are there any objections to? And to being, the place where we're going to put in whatever the motion kind of would be. Are there any objections to the approval of the plank on the minimum wage? And if there are no objections, then we're going to consider that a vote by acclamation and a vote for approval. So we won't have to get ayes or nays or anything like that. Overwhelmingly, that was really, really effective in getting through, especially like kind of our surface level. Everybody's on the same page. Like it just wasn't, a plank that wasn't already addressed. But to your point about discussion, I think some of it is going to just depend in the moment. So by default, we didn't put any limits on debate or on speaking. I go as a general rule by whose hand I see first in terms of the hand raised feature, and call on folks in order, with the exception of if we're kind of cycling through to second rounds of folks who have spoken, in that I start calling on folks who haven't spoken yet. So it's a little bit hard to see if you've been an admin on Google or on Zoom before. Y'all know the struggle of not necessarily being able to see the order of folks. So thank you in advance for your patience of knowing that it is not a deliberate attempt to ignore anybody whenever we're going through and calling on folks. If you don't get called on in hand raised order, that it's almost never my intention. But there are times in which I'm trying to circulate through kind of who we've heard from. If we get to a point when debate starts to stall, and we really only ran into this on, I would say, like 5 topics over the course of yesterday's meeting, where we just kept talking and we weren't really making any progress. And in those cases, either somebody called for a motion, or we just kind of paused and I didn't recognize folks, and we pushed the conversation in kind of a different direction, asking maybe the primary author for specific language, or the person who was objecting to the author's language to make a specific amendment to, what they were objecting to. So it feels a little bit informal at first. If we start to feel like that's not a good fit for us, my natural inclination is to follow the standing rule that the SDEC uses, which is 3 speakers for, 3 speakers against. What is it, 2 minutes each, Marco? 1 minute each.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we have in the standing rules is it 2?
I should know this. I know I've done it so many times.
3 for, 3 against,
2 minutes each.
2 minutes each, and then
Yeah.
on amendments
25.
or 2 against,
2 minutes.
2 minutes each. However, those the rules that Ginny was referring to are the convention standing rules that are recommended by the SDC that have been yet to be recommended by the convention, and the way they're written, they only apply to the floor. So so in other words, they're not in effect that way. However, you know, if the chair's running that committee wants to run the committee that way, and y'all are okay with that, you know, at a point in time, and maybe it's a point of you know, when it gets contentious and everyone's fine with, you know, running it that way, we can. But technically, you don't generally want to limit debate in committee because that's where it gets hashed out. But could it happen? Could the convention set a standing rule to do that and to have that? Yes, but it would still, the main body needs to approve it, and obviously the main body isn't meeting until
June.
Yeah, after this committee does its work.
Right. So I thank you for the clarification, Marco. I had missed that that specific part of your question. I had misinterpreted that. But does that answer your question? So my leaning is to start with more organic, and then if we can't operate efficiently within that, the 3 minutes for, 3 minutes against with 2-minute speaking limits has been really productive within the SDEC, and that would be what I would advocate that we make a change to. But even on some pretty contentious subjects with some very chatty folks on the call yesterday, I see Paul's smile. He knows, myself included. I'm a chatty folk. That's why they made me chair so that I couldn't talk. We I think can get a lot done just fairly organically. Does that answer your question? Okay, Paul.
I think maybe in response to Jenny's question, it's time for me to do my soapbox speech, which is
Go for it.
I am a very, very, very strong believer in the platform being about what unites us as Democrats and not about what divides us as Democrats. That the more we engage in I'm going to win over you sorts of stuff within the platform, the more we basically create division in the party and we make it easier to elect Republicans. And I'm about using this as a tool to elect Democrats. So I would strongly urge, to the extent possible, that we avoid things like we had last night, where we had an 8-7 vote one way that then switched and became an 8-7 vote the other way, because that doesn't tell you anything about what unites us as Democrats. It points out that there's division there and that there's something that needs to be worked out. So again, that gets back to my suggestion before of you know, taking things aside and working with people with whom you have differences to see if you can't work out language that addresses mutually your different concerns, perhaps not 100% as you'd like them addressed, but in a manner that makes sure that it doesn't contain things that people vociferously disagree with, because if it does, that's how we start dividing ourselves up and electing Republicans.
Absolutely. If permanent holds true, y'all will all have that first portion of Paul's comment memorized by the time this is all said and done. But it's a good note. I really do think that overwhelmingly we're going to find that a lot of this is just wordsmithing, and it is us coming to really consensuses on the ideology pretty early on. It's amazing. I think the thing I like about Platform is it's a good reminder on how many things the Democrats do agree on, even though folks want to spend a lot of time pointing out all of the differences between different legs of, you know, the party and different, you know, ideas within Texans.
If everyone will take that to heart, it'll be the last time I will give that speech.
There you go. Leonard.
Yeah, just if I could, just really quick. I mean, I hope everybody takes the opportunity to read this in advance and try to get together in advance. So the work that was done for hours upon hours that was yesterday that y'all did, I didn't stay on the whole time and I couldn't anymore, but you know, taking advantage of the opportunity in these 6 days to try to work out as much as you can in advance, because once we get into the space, all have our regular lives. We all have our lives at work. We all have our lives at home, and we are trying to give extra to the cause and to trying to come up with a better document. And so trying to do as much work on the front end, definitely. So we're not sitting here for 8 hours, and being respectful, because one thing that I did see and notice is we had a lot of the same people were the ones that were speaking over and over and over again last night. And so I guess just to be respectful of that, give everybody room to voice, I think, as we move forward in this process. And you did a great job, Madam Chair, and everybody on the team also. I mean, you guys did awesome. But in all honesty, I hope we don't have to do 8 hours or 7 hours or 6 hours, and we take the opportunities to get together early so we don't have to be here late. So thank you.
Amen.
Thank you, Mel.
No, thank you. And I think we definitely took away some good lessons, and advance work is one of them without any doubt. So thank y'all in advance for the time you put in between now and Tuesday, and for all the passion that you have for each of these topics. I know it's amazing to find folks who are passionate about so many things, and to get to connect with so many folks on all of these different issue areas. So, please connect with people with that shared interest on a policy in advance. Like I said, there's so much that I think you'll find that we will all agree with, despite the size of this committee. But the more advance notice that you get to put on things, I mean, having a weekend well positioned between now and our next meeting, I think will be incredibly helpful, so that folks have time to review. And please take time, if you can, to review the changes that others are making in other sections. Even if you're, for example, like I said, I'll continue to pick on the section that I care the most about, which is, interpersonal violence. And if that's not your section, that's fine. But if you see comments, just scan over those, so that you're comfortable with it. That way you're not seeing it the very first time coming into the meeting, and totally green and don't have a chance to ask your questions in advance. If you have a question during the meeting, though, please feel free to ask. I think Leonard brought up a great point, when it came to talking about having some of the same folks over and over again. I think there were some really, really good ideas that got brought up in writing that we necessarily didn't hear over, the conversation, and vice versa. There's definitely a place where everybody is more comfortable communicating. So jump in with folks, have those conversations in writing, email, get on Zooms, have phone calls. I know I remember the first time that I met on specifically reduction of gun violence with a bunch of old folks from West Texas, and I thought there was no way that we would all end up on the same page by the end of that working group. And I can assure you that we did, and it was a really, really good conversation. So you'll be amazed at how much good work that you can do. I have one more technical recommendation that somebody messaged me in the chat that I had not remembered from temporary, that I will request of y'all, and then that's it for me. And that last is that if you are adding bullet points, so each of our planks is set up, generally speaking, there's kind of a paragraph at the top, and then there's bullet points underneath it. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it tends to work that way. If you're adding a bullet point, please add things as separate suggestions, because anytime you can add one bullet point as a suggestion and the second bullet point as a second suggestion, rather than adding them together, it is much easier for us to edit as a team. So when we all get back together, we're not approving half of it and then having to edit the other half and things along the way. So we're going to have a learning curve, I know, where there's going to be things that we come away from at the end of the next meetings going, oh, I wish we'd thought of that when we explained it to folks. So don't sweat it. But one of the things that we definitely learned that made our life a little more tricky was when we had folks put in big chunks of text as one suggestion. So anywhere you can break that up into multiple suggestions so that we can just click approve, approve, approve. Really, really easy from an editing side. Marco.
Yeah. Also, I just wanted to flag that can actually be a little bit difficult to do, and I'll show you why. And so I have some suggestions on maybe to get around that.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So let's say
I have a question. How do we raise our hands?
Oh, good question, Stephen. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a feature that says React.
Yes.
That tool should give you several different emoji options, and one of which is a hand raising. So depending on whether you've used it before, like for me, I have to click recognize hand gestures.
Okay,
Um,
I saw it. It says
I saw-
download package. Should I download the package and start using it?
Try just clicking on the React button and see if it gives you
Okay.
a raise hand
I
option.
will. Oh, here we go. And
Great.
this would be it. It says clap. Is that what I want? Clap. Oh, raise hand. Here we go. Got it. Found it.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Now,
No,
now-
thank you. That's a very important thing that
Yes.
I had completely forgotten to cover. And y'all feel
Okay.
free to use, I love the other reactions too. Know that when we are editing, we'll edit just like Marco has the screen set up now. I typically will be screen sharing, is how we had it run last time. It worked really well. But I won't be able to see the chat and I won't be able to see anything other than raised hands. So if you've got anything that needs to go in the chat, other officers should be able to see it. Marco should be able to see it. But we're going to do
Okay.
a lot of work through that hand raise tool. So that's an important question. Thanks so much, Stephen.
Yes, I have one technical question that somebody can probably can answer. My webcam is working fine, but it's not coming in on Zoom. I'm getting an error message when I try to start the video. So my it says
We see you.
oh my gosh, it just worked. Why did that happen?
One of those technological flukes. It's kind of like when I
I'm-
stand next to the office copier and just yell at it and it
Okay,
starts working.
I've tried to do this at least a dozen times through the meeting. Maybe I had to start the React thing first. Okay, it's working now. That's all. Thank you. I'm done.
No, thank you. Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, I think it probably had something to do with that downloading of the package. Probably you needed some more Zoom.
I didn't download the package.
Oh, okay. Well, then I have no idea.
I just used React and got the standard raise hand button and lower hand button like
Amazing.
this. Worked fine.
No idea.
Okay.
It worked. So it's hard to sort of just do one edit because watch what'll happen. I'm in editing mode right now. So it's called suggesting now. All right. So let's say I wanted to add a new bullet. So you get this little thing that's over here, right? So let's say puppies, rainbows. Okay. Well, let's say now I want to add another bullet underneath that. It starts treating it as something altogether. So kitties. All right. So that when you're trying to look at one bullet and approve it and then try to approve another bullet can be really difficult. So I think what there's two ways to maybe tackle this. What I would say is separate your comments so that way we can treat them one by one. So give it a little space between different text. So like that. That way we'll be like, okay, do we want to add puppies and rainbows? Sure. Okay, we'll add it. And then we get to kitties and toys. No, because of whatever. Then we can keep this puppies and rainbows, but kitties and toys, we'll get back to it later. And then we move on to the next thing. So that'll help a little bit. The other thing that we could do is just, let's say you add 3 things in a row. All right. If you add 3 things in a row, one thing that we could do is, Madam Chair, one thing that you could do is you could delete those and then make it a suggestion. Oops. Pretend I'm a different person, right? Because Marco added that, but Hannah's adding it. So if you add it, it'll be a little bit separate. That's one way to do it, but it is gonna group itself together if they're next to each other. So I would say it's helpful if you separate it, because then it's not as easy to sort of just approve in bulk. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yep. And if y'all get stuck on that, at the end of the day, it is not that big of a deal. I would rather get the changes you want to make in, and we will figure out the technical side of it. We made it work yesterday, but it is a little faster if you can put them in as separate comments. And if you find a trick to it on how to do them all separately, feel free to share. So I saw a hand, but I think it's gone. All right. Any other questions? All right, Laura.
Yeah, so I went through and changed the permissions on everybody's line. I know that Tim said it still wasn't working for him, but I am curious if anyone else is still having access problems, and then we can probably take that offline. I don't want to hold up the call on that, but I just want to figure that out before our next meeting.
All right. No, thank you, Laura and Marco, for your work on setting up that spreadsheet. Like I mentioned earlier, we only used it once yesterday in terms of actually taking votes, but it was incredibly helpful to have, because when we're talking about voice votes over Zoom, it's just hard to tell. So this will be a great way in case we need to get down to that. But hopefully that is a testament to the kind of editing we'll get to do on permanent. I'm excited. Okay. Last call. Any other logistics questions, ideas? As I say at the end of Texas Young Dems calls, celebrations, lamentations, anything in between?
Madam Chair, just if anyone wants me to walk them through Google, making comments to say after.
Perfect. Yeah, excellent reminder. All right. And Robert, if you don't mind hanging out, I saw your message, if you'll stick around with us. But other than that, Lizette.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Since I'm a non-voting member of the committee, will I still be able to put my responses in there the same as everybody else, or do I have to do something differently?
In the voting spreadsheet?
Well, even just the document, like to make suggestions.
Oh, that's a great question. Marco, as I understand it, I think you're fine to make suggestions. It's just when we take, you wouldn't be able to say, I move to accept your language or anyone else's. As far as the suggestions go, they aren't motions in terms of what we think of in around Robert's rules. So from my understanding, you can treat the document the way that anybody else would.
Yeah, I mean, when we're doing everything informally, it's fine. It's just that, like, for instance, like, hey, what do you guys think about this bullet right here? Is everyone good with it? And everyone's like, yes, and they nod yes. Or no, like, let's discuss it a little bit, and we discuss it a little bit. And okay, are we good to move on? Does everyone like the edits? Everyone good? Cool. We'll move to the next thing. When we're working informally, participate. But if we have to take a hard vote, like, all right, this is a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay. Don't vote. And if we have to take a roll call vote where we check the boxes, you won't have that ability.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, good question. All right. Any other questions? Well, thank y'all so much for your time this evening. I feel like we've got a pretty good grasp of what's coming ahead, but if that is not the case or a question comes up, you have my email address, the other officers, Marco, y'all feel free to reach out. We really want this to be an accessible process. I think that's the beauty of the platform. So please don't hesitate to engage. If you have anything, please take a look at the platform, have some nice evening reading for you today, and we'll jump right in as soon as folks start putting in edits. I'm ready. Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a great evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.